Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are when you're watching this. Welcome to the Boostly Spotlight series. This is the mini series on the Boostly podcast, which focuses the spotlight on businesses, products, and services that you as a host and hospitality owner could help you with either reducing, sort of hassle, or you could increase profit, or even just save yourself some time. So the whole reason we do these Boostly Spotlight series is to really draw your attention to people, services that will help you in your journey. So thank you if you're tuning in on the live. If you are here, just drop a GIF in the comment section, your favorite GIF, just so we know that you're on the live with us. Also, hi to you if you're tuning in on the podcast or on the YouTube after it's been recorded. My name's Liam Caranan. I'm the co-host of the podcast, and today we are joined by Maddy Rifkin. She's the CEO and founder of a service called Mount. Now, if you haven't heard of Mount, you're going to want to tune in for the next sort of 30 minutes to really find out how it can help your business. And she's here to share, as a hospitality owner, how you can make extra income and increase your guest experience through these additional services. She's also going to give us a sneak peek into the exciting and up-and-coming book. She's actually a published author in the book Direct Blueprint, which is getting released in December. And if you haven't heard, obviously, then you can go to boostly.co.uk/blueprint to get on the pre-order list, or if you're listening to this after it's been released, which is December 2022, you'll be able to buy the book there and find out more about it. So Maddy's actually joined us all the way from New York on the other side of the pond. And if you're tuned in on the live, make sure you're dropping a comment as to where you're watching this from, because we'd love to know. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hi, Maddy, and welcome along.
Hi, Liam. Thanks for having me on.
It's exciting to have you here. I know we've spoke before at the Shorty Awards in London earlier on this year, which was fantastic to see. Didn't you? You were one of the nominees of the Shorties, and
yeah, I was. For the Rising Star Award.
Amazing. So, for the people listening in who don't know what Mount is, can you explain as simply as possible what Mount is and what it does?
Yes. So simply put, Mount is a new software tool for hosts, property managers, and owners to basically increase your revenue per door. So essentially, we'll take anything you own, new or old, whether it be an electric bike, a golf cart, firewood, scooter, podcast studio. I mean, it's limitless. And we turn it into a rentable amenity for the guest. So when I say rentable amenity, it gets a QR code, it gets GPS tracked, it gets insurance, and the guest shows up and uses our app to rent everything. So it's pretty much self-service. You get a check at the end of the month with all of the revenue. But the premise is, let's stop calling upselling early check-in and late checkout and really get back to what it actually means, which is amenities, and operate similarly to a hotel.
So why should a host consider Mount?
So I'd say Mount is one of the only companies out there right now that really allows you to upsell these type of amenities without adding on a lot of extra work. Mm-hmm. You have a little extra work in setting it up, as with all new technology, but after that, it's more of you become a marketer of Mount. You have to tell your guests that the amenities are there, but in terms of renting them and using them, that's the guests, that's what they do. So it's like having a rental shack on your property, essentially. I mean, a hotel right now is making upwards of 30% of their total revenue from amenities and upsells. And I would say that's not the same percentage for short-term rentals. And it definitely should be. So, I mean, right now there's about $80 million being transacted in the short-term rental industry with upsells, but it's happening off property, whether it be at the electric bike shop, the boating company, the private chef. And that's all money being left on the table that you should be able to access. So that's really what Mount is opening up, is that pool of money.
I love that, because as a host myself, I look at that and I go, well, I'd love to get in on that. How many billion did you say?
80 million a day.
8 million a day. Wow. So yeah, that is incredible, isn't it? There's a lot of money being left on the table. And of course, all the guests that come and stay with us are arranging experiences. They're looking for things to do. And again, that can add to their experience. So how does it help guests? I guess we've touched on that, but how does it help guests in general?
So from the guest perspective, The typical use case I use is just think back to your last vacation or trip you took and the days and months leading up to it. I mean, you probably put in countless hours and days of research trying to figure out what you should do when you're at that place. For me, it was Portugal where I was last, and I was scouring TripAdvisor and Viator and even Airbnb experiences to try and figure out what I was doing. But in the back of my mind, I was like, well, is this real? Am I going to get scammed? Are they charging me double because I'm a tourist? Like, is this a tourist trap? It's just all those questions. And then I ended up asking my host anyways, because I figured they were a local. I was like, what should I actually be doing? And they gave me the best recommendations possible, which is actually now how I travel. I ask my host. So in that sense, the guest using Mount actually makes their life a lot easier because it'll show them exactly what they can do on property. If the host wants to put in their recommendations as well and get that referral revenue, they can do that. So I think it just makes it an easier process for everyone. And Mount really wants to become that consumer brand for the traveler where they are traveling because they know Mount is there. And they'll pull out the app and see what they can start renting. If your property you're staying at doesn't have these Mount amenities and next door does, you could actually go and rent those ones, meet more of the local community. So I think we're trying to make both sides of the process a lot easier.
That's cool. And like you say, from a guest perspective, just having somebody who's trusted, who can verify that that is a real service. I mean, last week we had Chris Mulhern from iPrac on, and we're talking about trust, and certainly having a service, an additional service, which is either recommended by the host or, like in this case, Mount has verified that it's a real place, then it just gives you so much more confidence that you can go and rent that amenity with certainty, doesn't it? Which is cool. I guess from the host's perspective, and I know people listening into this will be thinking, well, I'd love to offer all this awesome stuff, but I'm already stacked with changeovers, cleans, all this stuff. I just haven't got time to do it. So what would you say to those people? I guess the question is, what is involved for a host to get this set up? How much work do they need to do?
Fantastic question, because we know the host, the property manager, the owner, like there's just no extra time in the day for any of this. You don't want to bring on a service, call it, these little shampoo bottles as an amenity and have to restock them every single time. That's a nightmare. So what we've done is tried to create a self-service process where you can go on our website, click list an amenity, and we modeled the process of listing an amenity the exact same way you would list your property for rent. You input what type of amenity it is, whether it be an electric bike, a golf cart, a scooter, and then it auto populates with what you need to set up from there. So you need to put in pricing, you need to tie it to a location. So that's, how the GPS tracking works. And then you need to upload a few photos. From there, Mount will just verify that it's a real amenity. And then it's pretty much live. You have to order a QR code GPS tracker from us. And then basically what you need to do as a host is just a one-time setup. So you need to place the amenity in your property with a lock and that GPS tracker. And then from there, it's live on the platform. So you just become a marketer at that point. Once it's set up, it takes the whole process to set up is about a week because of the shipping times, but really it's maybe 10 minutes to an hour if you're not too tech savvy, which is okay. We'll help you through it. From there, once you've set it up, you really just have to go in and change your pre-arrival message, update it to just say, hey, this property is powered by Mount, download this app to rent these amenities, get the recommendations, and then put in a marketing poster to just, letting the guests know that this is available to rent, because that's the biggest piece is the education. After that, though, you're the marketer. You're not really doing any of the logistics because our platform was built on asset management and the asset is GPS tracked. You can see on the software platform where your amenity is going. Is it being brought back? In what condition? And you'll get text alerts if something goes extremely wrong, where it's like, all right, they left the bike, they didn't bring it back. Maybe you have to go get it. That happens less than 1% of the time. So really, it's not too much work after you set it up. The bulk of the work is getting it set up, just like adding on any other new software platform. And then you're good to go.
I guess that sounds good, because we all know from being hosts that, most of the work in getting something set up, like listings, for instance, is that first initial hurdle. And then once it's set up, the revenue starts to flow. So that makes complete sense. And I know people listening will, look at this as going, well, fair enough. That doesn't sound like too much work for the for the reward of constant income. So a couple of questions off the back of what you've just said there. The most guests, I guess, most of these assets are for your guests. Can anybody rent these amenities, or is it only for your guests if it's a host setting it up?
No, so I mean, right now in this moment in time, they are for your guests, but where Mount wants to get to is having you be able to choose your amenity as private or public. So a private amenity would be one just for your guest, most likely one that's inside the property. Maybe it's firewood, a propane tank, that type of stuff, or even like a bachelorette kit. Those are pretty popular. But you also have the option to make your amenities public, meaning maybe it's an electric bike in your garage, a golf cart in the driveway. And if it's a public amenity, anyone with the Mount app can come and rent it. You actually have the opportunity to make a lot more money that way. Tap into really the traveler community. That's the premise of Mount. That's what we want you to do. And it's quite easy to do because so all rentals within Mount have to start and end at your property. So even if someone is coming to rent your electric bike, they can take it wherever they want, but they can't physically end their rental until they're back on your property. They've locked it back up and kind of set it up for the next person. So in that sense, the public amenities work. It's honestly a way to compete with your neighbors if they're also doing the short-term rental thing as well, where if they don't have Mount amenities and you do, you can also capture their guests. You'll know exactly who they are if they rent from you, and then you can flip it around and market your book direct to them also.
Yeah, I love that as well, because I've recently read a book by Alex Hormozy called 100 Million Offers, and he talks about how you can create a value stack when people can only compare things on price. So when they're comparing different short-term rentals that they might go and stay in, or different hotel rooms or bed and breakfast rooms, ultimately they're comparing just on price if there's not that much different. So they will just compare on price. However, if the value stack is different, if they can clearly see, hey, at this one, I could rent a bike and we could go and take some firewood and marshmallows, that sort of thing, then they're more likely to go with it as a value proposition and pay that little bit more, which is cool, just having that. So it sounds as though there's not ever so much work involved. And I guess if it is one of our guests who rent the amenity, then we've got all their details anyway from a security perspective, which for the majority of our listeners is going to be. What happens if there's a problem? So you mentioned if something goes wrong, which is very, very low amount of the time, what is the process? How would we know necessarily it's gone wrong?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things we've seen happen just with the amenities on our platform. One question is obviously theft. Like, what happens if it's stolen? There's a few use cases for that. If it's stolen while your guest is renting the amenity and it's their fault, like they are liable. So all the amenities on Mount are rented as if they were renting them from a rental shop. So they sign a virtual terms and conditions sheet within the app, and they are liable up to the cost of the amenity when they're renting it. So if it happens to be stolen, we have their credit card information and they would be charged for that. If it's stolen off of your property, in that case, you would look towards your property insurance, and you would hopefully have it insured through them and get it reimbursed. Other than that, those are really the only two use cases in theft that happen. I mean, we get a lot of the questions about what happens if a guest leaves it, and do I have to go get it? Do I have to get these things serviced with maintenance? We put on a mileage tracker for all of the movable amenities, scooters, bikes, golf carts, that type of stuff. And when it hits a certain mileage, you do have to get it serviced to keep it on the platform. We typically will hook you up to your local bike provider so that you can give them the business. Sometimes they'll come to your property. It's pretty easy. And it really is beginning of the season, end of the season. So it's not every week. And then for a golf cart, same deal. So not too many issues. If there is something pressing, Mount handles all of the customer service. So the guest is supposed to go through us in the app. They can chat us, call us. So we handle all of that. And, we've tried to make it as easy as possible for the host, because we want you to offer these amenities, but not feel like you're taking on an extra business.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. And I know certainly over here in the UK, one of the things which might stop some of us is like the liabilities around we looked a few years ago, me as a host looked at getting kayaks and stuff like that, some of the ones near the Broads and that. Is there any kind of help that you'd be able to provide, or any steer for hosts who are worried about, the liability aspect of things?
Yeah, great question. This is something I should definitely mention in my one-liner, but Mount has built a custom insurance policy to cover all injury liability when you're on the platform. And really, we figured out that a lot of people don't understand this, but the gray area with insurance is when you list or offer an amenity at your property and they take it and leave, because that's still your liability, but your property insurance doesn't cover that. Your property insurance covers if the amenity is on your property. But what happens if it's a kayak and they hop in the lake? That isn't covered. And so that's what Mount built a policy to cover. So for all of these amenity rental types, barring any like ATVs, snowmobiles, like large boats, the liability is covered for injury, which happens to be kind of the biggest gray area for these hosts. You do have to list on the platform, and if your amenity goes live, you are covered. So that's our unique way of adding value for the customers we work with.
I mean, from a host's perspective, I can only see upside here because, there's very little work involved. I'm able to make an extra revenue stream. My guests are getting a better experience. And also, I've got some confidence around the liability and, the protection of the asset itself, which is really cool. Is there any, how far can this go? So what kind of amenities, you mentioned like firewood and propane and stuff like that. Is there limits to what people can list as amenities?
Right now, there isn't. So if you go and click list an amenity, it'll give you 4 main categories that we see a lot of people be very successful with: electric bikes, scooters, beach equipment, and then firewood. And then there's like an other category. So you can list to your heart's content in the other. We'll reach out and let you know if you've gone too far, because we don't want your guests to feel nickel and dime. And we have enough data to be able to tell you, if you're a 4-bedroom property in this specific location, here's exactly what you should be listing. Because I think Mount is so new that most everyone comes to us with the question, I really want to do this, but what should I be offering? So we'll answer that for you and really kind of become the air DNA of amenities and figuring out that data-driven decision. But yeah, I mean, people get very creative. Someone wanted to do a hookah pipe, definitely said no to that. But we do have these like new type of amenities that are these clear lock boxes that we geofence, they become locked and stuff like that. You could put a lot of stuff in there. So we've had s'mores kits, the firewood, propane tanks, just all that stuff that is really hard to manage and really hard to tell if it's being used or not. That's really what the Mount platform helps with.
That's cool. And when it comes down to like, firewood's got me thinking, because we've got places with, place where they can toast marshmallows and stuff like that. What, how would we know to restock? Do we get a notification from Mount saying that amenity has been used in that lockbox and then let our cleaning teams know? How does that work?
Yeah, so you can see exactly in real time when stuff is being used. So for the firewood, for the propane tanks, that type of stuff, you can set it up so you get text alerts. That might be a lot of alerts for you though. So actually I would just recommend going on the platform and checking or hooking it up to your PMS. And it'll tell you like, hey, this was used on November 1st at 5 p.m. That's how you know to restock it and go refill it. If it hasn't been used, you're still good. So yeah, it does that type of stuff.
That's cool. And the extent of obviously this problem, I mean, now we're talking about it, it seems like a really obvious kind of like upsell and a chance to make extra revenue. How far do you think this problem extends? Do you think this is something that the hospitality industry as a whole hasn't solved yet? Do you think this is something which needs to be sorted?
I do believe that. Actually, I think it's a multi-industry wide problem. Mount's premise is that if you're a piece of private property, you are having trouble upselling. And I really believe it's the fact that no one other than Mount has figured out this self-service aspect. Right now, if you want to upsell within the hotel industry, you have the concierge, you have the person behind the rental desk, and you are physically signing a sheet, you're giving them cash, you're giving them your license, like whatever it looks like, because there's been no software in the industry to enable this. I mean, we've seen it in the short-term rental industry too, where people, companies are telling them we do upselling, and then you realize it's just early check-in and late checkout because that's the only thing the software enables. Same thing goes for actually the way offices are operating. They can maybe offer some type of amenities that's like a phone booth, but offering these movable type of amenities, no one's really wanted to take on asset management. I would say The scooter companies were kind of the first, not the first, but the ones that really nailed doing that self-service. But with a dockless model, I don't think they went about it properly at all execution-wise, but they did build the technology to make it possible. And then even within multifamily as well, when we've seen the blend between multifamily and short-term rentals, that's where things for Mount become super appealing, because you have people who are staying there long-term for a year, and then you also have the mix within there of short-term rentals, and everyone is wanting these amenities. Maybe the person staying there for the year has a snowboard, has golf clubs, and the short-term rental people want to rent it. So that's what Mount is making possible across all industries.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. The opportunity is just huge because of not only the short-term rental industry, but like you say, the people mid-term rentals or medium-term rentals, as I've spoke to a few guests about. We had Sarah Weaver on here talking about mid-term rentals, and those are the people who may be staying for a period of time, but they can pack most of their stuff, but they'd like a bike. They just haven't got access to it, or they'd like to have some of the amenities that Mount could then solve that problem. So, and as we're seeing more and more, people traveling for work, digital nomads and that side of things, the opportunity is just growing and growing for hosts. So I think anybody listening into this will see the opportunity, which is massive. And talking about that story, that's a good opportunity to segue into the book, which you've got your own chapter in the book Direct Blueprint, which is available from December. I know you've got your copy there. I'm lucky enough to have seen a sneak preview of your chapter. But before we talk about that, why did you want to be involved in the book, and how did it all come about?
It came about in an interesting way. So when I was at the Shorties, I met Mark, the guy behind the brainchild behind the book. And when I was at the Shorties, they were actually celebrating the publication of Hospitable Hosts. They just got all these amazing people together to tell their story. And I actually read the book. It was very educational. There we go. That one. And I saw just how the community responded to that book, and was like, how do I get involved in the next one? And I think Mark and I are on the same page where we want to push the industry's boundaries. And I think a lot of the older companies in the space that are doing very well have gotten stuck in their ways a little, where they buy a booth at the conference, they do webinars, and they stick to the status quo. They're like, that's worked, let's not change it. And I am a believer of like, let's do things and see if they work. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do the book, was because it's a kind of a new way of marketing, and the Mount story is really unique. I mean, I started this journey when I was 12 years old, and it's continued for the last 10, 12 years. Being able to tell that, and just the journey of what got me here, plus being able to share like why people should be upselling and really thinking about this now, I think was also a unique opportunity. But really it came down to like, what's new this book, not a lot of people have been doing that in the space. So I was like, yeah, let's do it, Mark. And then from there, it kind of just grew.
I love that. I love the special mention as well, because Hospitable Hosts was the brainchild of Jodie Sterling, who is actually she owns the publisher of the book Direct Blueprint, which is awesome. And that started out as literally just an idea to push the industry, like you say. And now we're seeing real people being helped off the back of that, having and Mark describes yourself and the other people in there as the Avengers of hospitality, the people who are really taking on the challenge of pushing hospitable hospitality, even sort of boundaries, to be able to give people the best experience while also not creating a huge amount of workload, which I know hosts are struggling with. It's making it easier, isn't it, for people using awesome tech such as Mount. So I love the example you gave in there of when you were on the beach in Hawaii looking for a kayak. As I say, I've got to sneak peek a bit of your chapter there. And also, like you say, the history behind it. So is there any sneak peek that you can share with the people listening without giving away the sort of secret sauce to the chapter?
Yes. So, I mean, a lot of people know my story by now. I believe that I started all of this entrepreneurship journey when I was 12. So it talks a little bit about that. But I think what a lot of people I haven't told actually a lot of people, is that the two reasons why Mount essentially became what it is today, which is this platform that can take anything and turn it into a rentable amenity. Me and my co-founder, Rashab Nayak, who I met in college, are just massive travelers. And right when I was graduating last year, we had the unique opportunity of participating in a startup accelerator. Just so happened to be in Hawaii. And at the time I was like, well, I started this company, and if all I get to do is travel to Hawaii for free for 3 months, like mission accomplished, that's pretty awesome right out of college. So me and him ended up there, but it honestly just led us on this crazy journey of traveling together, really understanding as a traveler the problems. Like, we were only living in Hawaii for 3 months, so we didn't bring a lot with us. I mean, we even ended up renting a car from one of his friends for $400 a month, which is nothing when you're in Hawaii. We then realized why it was nothing, because we almost died a few times in that car, but the wheels almost popped off. It was a crazy adventure. But I think with the crazy experiences we had in Hawaii, it helped us really understand our customer from the traveler perspective, and that we didn't have a lot. We would show up to the beach with a towel that we bought from Target, and we're like, all right, where can I get a beach chair? I need a kayak, like all this stuff that you would want, but you don't want to travel with. So that's, I guess, a long sneak peek of what you'll get in the book, is like why, from a traveler perspective, Mount is needed, and then how the host actually can implement that.
That's amazing. And it is a really good chapter. And I just enjoy it. And thank you so much for sharing it. I know there's a lot of people who will be excited to read it, and also contact you off the back of it, as you say, is not only sharing your story, but it's a great marketing tool as well. So that's amazing. One thing that I have got to ask, and I know you share the reason why in the book, but why is it called Mount? What is the story behind that?
I wish I had a good answer for this. And I wish I could remember, but really Mount. So I grew up in Colorado. Like, the whole reason this was started was because I wanted to build a bike lock that was attached to my bike, because I forgot it everywhere. I mean, that was a 12-year-old problem I had. And the company used to be called Mount Locks, and then we dropped the locks because we don't do that anymore. But I like to say that Mount is an ode to Colorado, because it's like half a mountain. We basically drop the last part of the word and call it Mount. And then I think, honestly, it just ended up working really well, because we mount little QR code GPS trackers to everything, and make it a rentable amenity. And then our logo too, you can see on my shirt, is an M. So also they look like mountains. But the real logo actually comes from the confidence pose. I don't know if you're familiar with that. No, so there's like this study that shows if you stand in a Superman pose, like before an interview or before, exactly like that,
got it.
you'll ace it, or you just get confidence. So I took the Superman pose, those arms, which are two triangles essentially, and I just flipped them vertical, and that's where the M comes from. It's like confidence is in our DNA.
It works. It obviously works. And, I mean, Maddie, you're very inspirational from, sort of the journey you've been on, from what's explained in the chapter. And I'm not going to take away thunder from that, but that is so inspirational. And I know from meeting you in London, the energy you've got, and I know you're going to, sort of do amazing things and change this industry. I'm certainly interested in Mount, and I know many hosts listening into this on the live on YouTube and on the podcast afterwards will want to find out more. So before the end of this, we will share how we can get in touch with you. But before we do, we love to do some quick fire questions as we reach towards the end of these. So these are just quick fire questions that you can be as short or as long answers as you like. But we just love asking some questions for fun, basically. So I couldn't not ask this, knowing that you're an avid traveler. What's your favorite travel destination?
My current favorite would have to be Iceland, in the winter or summer.
Okay, and why?
I had the opportunity to go there in March, and it was just fascinating. I mean, you kind of feel like you're in a different era of the earth, I guess. I don't know. There's so many different landscapes, and you get to be one with nature and unplug, and you drive an hour and it's completely different. So I think I've always been one with nature. I grew up in Colorado, so it was nice to be able to go back to that and just experience all of it from a different perspective.
That's definitely one on my list. I know some of the landscapes there looks like the Arctic, and other landscapes looks like Mars and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So, what is the best bit of advice you've ever received?
I think the best bit of advice I've gotten is just like failing forward and not being afraid to fail. because it means progress. So we kind of bred that into Mount as well.
I love that. And that's, do you know, it reminds me of a famous video by Denzel Washington. I think I've seen on YouTube. He always mentions that, which is awesome. What is one fact about yourself that people would find surprising or not many people may already know?
Oh gosh, I could probably give you a few. One of the other reasons why Mount was started, or just I had the drive to continue it when I was young, was because I was actually hit by a car when I was 16, but as a pedestrian. So I got crushed the whole right side of my body and was in the hospital. I had a few surgeries, was in a wheelchair for a while, had to relearn to walk. So I think when you go through something like that, you know, that was like rock bottom essentially, where I had to kind of rethink what I wanted to do with life. And after that, I, you know, wasn't afraid to fail. I was like, you know, what could be worse than, you know, relearning how to do everything essentially. So
that's amazing. From great challenge comes, you know, great inspiration, and that should be in the book. I mean, again, that isn't in there, so that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And then lastly, we usually ask one or two questions, which is either who inspires you or your favorite motto. And I know you might have already shared your favorite motto, but yeah, is there any other sort of bits of advice that you'd be able to share with us, or anything that has inspired you on your journey?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my life motto that I try and live by is like, life is 90% confidence. And even if you don't really know what you're doing, but you're confident, you can probably get by. Not fake it till you make it, but just being confident. So that's what I've tried to live by after being hit by a car, actually. And it's worked pretty well. So I like that one.
Yeah, I like it. I one of the sort of mentors in my life says, see it until you be it, instead of fake it till you make it. And I like that one more because it is a case of, like you say, that Superman pose that all ties in together with that kind of bringing what you imagine into reality, you know, like this. It's really good. So what a lovely way to end. And thank you so much for today. So for people who are wanting to get in touch and find out more about Mount, what's the best way to do so?
A few ways. I mean, you can go to our website, which is rentmount.com, click list an amenity and create an account. Then, you know, we'll have your information and I can email you. You could reach out on LinkedIn, very active there. It's just Madison Rifkin, I think, or Maddie Rifkin. Yeah, those are the two best ways to get in touch with me. I mean, Instagram as well, but all the socials.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people reaching out to you. And just for one last time for everybody listening in and watching on YouTube, it's the Book Direct Blueprint, which is out in December with Maddie's chapter in. And that is coming out December. If you don't already know about it, you need to go to boostly.co.uk/blueprint, and you'll be able to find out more information there, depending on if you're listening to this before it's released or after the release. You'll still be able to see all the information in that one place. So Maddie, thank you so much for today. And is there any last words of wisdom before we end for today?
No, I mean, just thanks for having me on. It was great to kind of share the Mount story, talk about the book, and looking forward to next time.
Looking forward to it. Thanks very much. Bye for now.
Having a blast. Gonna get it on the Boostly podcast. Boostly like Bruce Lee, cause it's so hard and the T is loose leaf. Making up those rhymes, don't write it, just do it loosely.